Okay, you're live.
Okay, great. Good evening and welcome to the October 22nd board meeting of the Wgsd Boe School District. We'll start off, if I can have a motion, if everyone's had a chance to review the agenda. First, any amendments to the agenda?
Yeah, David, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda. Unfortunately, I have another obligation at 7:30, and so I'm to amend the agenda to discuss item 4.02 before 4.01.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, 4.02 and 4.01 are shifted. So I draw everybody's
Thanks for your
attention.
flexibility, guys.
I draw everybody's attention to the public comments. That certainly, whilst we don't take public comments live, we welcome any items that members of the public would like to offer as public comments. Please, when you send them, either send them to me or send them to Sherry Myers, Board Secretary, and we'll make sure they are included in the permanent record as public comments. And then separate from that, also, I draw people's attention to the correspondence log where Dr. Simpson administration and others have addressed questions that have been given by members of the public. So item 3.02, board calendar.
Yeah, and the only thing at this point is just when you get a chance, if you haven't, put out a survey regarding scheduling our board self-evaluation, as well as the time when you all get together to review my performance. And so if you get an opportunity to complete that doodle, great, and then we'll get something on the calendar real soon. Other than that, there's no items of note.
Anybody have any questions about items on the board calendar? Okay, so we'll move now on to item 4.02, update and progress on grades 3 to 12. John and your team.
Thank you very much. And I am going to share my screen for a presentation. Okay, you able to see it? Great. Okay.
Yes.
As you are aware, ever since we left school in mid-March, we have been preparing for a return when we felt we could safely do so. And the first re-entry into school started with our preschoolers, which was August 31st. And they have been back at Ambrose since that time. Then we made the decision the next group would be our K through 2. K through 2 started on the 14th of October, and I'll speak a little bit to that. Invite my team to jump in at any point. At the time we presented for approval re-entry of K through 2, we also set tentative timelines for both 3 through 5 to come 2 weeks after K through 2 on October 28th, as well as 6 through 8 to come 2 weeks after the 3 through 5 on November 11th. This past week, and we've been, of course, like I said, we've been planning all along. This past week, we had made the decision and communicated to people that we were for sure bringing back our 3rd through 5th on the 28th, and confirmed that on November 11th, we would be bringing back our 6th through 8th graders, although details were not yet in place. We have, since that correspondence earlier in the week, made the decision regarding our high schoolers as well. So we're going to kind of present some of that information, what our plans are, and entertain any questions or comments that you have related. Guiding principles all along the way from the start. We always come back in Webster to our kids and their needs, both their physical and mental health needs, as well as their academic ones. Those things will always come first, but if safety is paramount. Physical safety as well as social emotional. Also something that we have to always be mindful of, not just in a pandemic, but being aware that in a pandemic, a lot of the inequities that exist within our system, within our societies, are even more glaring and even more impactful. And so we have to continue to be mindful of doing what we can to ensure equity and access to our children as well as our families. And that critically important is that we remain flexible and agile in all that we do. I can't even begin to tell you the flexibility and agility that our administrators, our teachers, all of our staff are showing. And I think you know that, but on a daily basis, things are changing, whether it's new things that are coming down from governing bodies, or it's just lessons learned from having children back or doing something in a virtual environment. It's a necessity. It can be hard, but flexible and agility are paramount. So that's kind of where I just kind of wanted to throw that out right there, is that anything that we plan and prepare, we always have to reserve the right to change based on what's good for kids and what's good for our adults too, and for families. And so while I'm going to share with you plans for return and are thinking related, I do want to reserve the right to, if we need to, just like we've done since March, pivot pretty quickly, but not without thought and intention. K through 2 implementation the 14th was super exciting for a number of people in the school system. We invited back our students in the responsive learning plan in grades K through 2. And staffs, of course, welcomed the children with open arms. And there were a lot of adults that were also doing the same for our staff. The example on the right is the Avery PTO that packed their kind of staff lounge area full of all kinds of goodies, as well as a welcome back. School definitely doesn't look the same. We knew it wasn't going to look the same. It hasn't looked the same since we left in March. And that's one thing that we try to impress on people, is that regardless of the setting, it's different. And it's going to be different for a while. And that takes getting used to for some. And for some, it's harder to get used to than others. But the kids came back. We have a lot of procedures, safety procedures in place, health procedures in place to do our part to minimize transmission. And I say minimize transmission because one of the things that we know with COVID, through what we've read, through what we've seen, through what others have experienced, is that, and what we've experienced, is that it's inevitable for at least some time in the foreseeable future that you're going to have cases that come into your schools. And so it's, what do you do in your schools to prevent mitigation, to prevent spread? And so I feel good about the efforts that we've done thus far. Here are some additional examples of kids back in school. Lessons learned or confirmed. Like I said, there's daily lessons learned and confirmed on all of our parts, which is what makes this time difficult, which makes it draining for us, and especially for our teachers every single day. First of all, lessons learned over the past few weeks is that structure is really, really important. It's really, really important for contact tracing, because again, it's inevitable. And Sandy and John M. and our nurses and our administrators have worked really hard to do the best job that they can with that. And it's time consuming and it's energy draining, and not just on the part of the contact tracers, but you can imagine also on our staff, on our teachers, because instead of just having to think through, while they're always thinking procedurally, especially our K through 2, they are thinking procedurally, just like our preschool staff. They're also having to be mindful of things like distance, mindful of things like masks, all those things. And that's not easy. That takes energy. It takes time for them to do that. And I can't applaud them more for their efforts to do so. Also lessons learned, again, things that we knew, people just need to stay home if they're symptomatic. If you're experiencing any kind of a symptom as a child, as an adult, it's critically important that you stay home. Now is not the time to try and tough things out. Now is not the time to try and justify something that's a new allergy that may have come on you've never experienced. It's really important for us to follow those procedures. And effective and efficient communication is really important. And we're working hard on that. And I will say that we have also learned from different incidences where we haven't been as effective and efficient as we should. And that's at all times, but it's also as a part of this process. We continue to learn. Return to in-person in grades 3 through 12. Again, with everything that we're talking about, the factors that we're looking at, there's so many factors that go into our decision making. These are the same factors that I shared with you before. Certainly, we're mindful of COVID-19 data, both as it relates to the county, the broader region, as well as locally. Lessons learned since August 24th, since our children and adults have been back in schools. I should also probably put since April, because we had staff that came back in April, our custodians, our facilities teams, maintenance teams were back in April. We've had kids back in our athletic and activities since July. So we've learned a lot along the way from them. Obviously, Ambrose started as well. And then medical experts. I continue to be blessed to be in the company weekly, and sometimes more than weekly, with some pretty amazing doctors, infectious disease specialists, who are greatly influencing our decision-making on return and how to do so safely. And then lastly, we continue to try to correspond with stakeholders as much as possible, including through some of that survey data that we shared with you. Practically speaking, again, real quickly, shared the last time, masks, no exceptions. That is number one mitigation, reduction of transmission strategy, making sure that masks for all children and adults are on with very few exceptions, maintaining social distancing at appropriate levels, cohorting kids as we can, keeping adults who don't need to be in the building out. Again, some of those cleaning protocols. One of the things that we've done in Webster thus far, and we will do with the reentry, is expecting if kids and adults are going to be taking off their masks to eat lunch, we're expecting and planning for that they have at least 6 feet plus of space in order to do so. That's not in place in all the school systems. Right now, we're able to do that with some administrators who have helped rethink like how we do lunch, where we do lunch, and flexibility of teachers and staff. Health protocols, again, these are no different. These are what guide us, what we're looking to guide parents. We have these protocols in place for when do you stay home, how long do you stay home. This is an algorithm that our nurses use to make determinations on when kids, to help support determination on when kids can need to go home, when they come back. And lastly, the protocol in terms of positive cases, which helps with the contact tracing. Again, I'm kind of moving through this because these are things that Dr. Wiley Skinner touched on much more thoroughly the last time around, but they continue to be accessed regularly and implemented. So 3rd through 5th grade, nothing real new to report. They're coming back in person on October 28th, which is a week from yesterday. While we had a longer the 2 weeks, while lengthy, has provided us with the opportunity to learn from our operations, learn from our successes, learn from any mistakes, test our capacities with staffing, a whole lot of things that we're learning on a regular basis. So we feel good about our children coming back at that level on October 28th. The 6th through 8th grade, we are also looking to bring them back in person, and that will be on November 11th, 2 weeks after our 3rd through 5th graders come back. At the Steger 6th grade center, we will bring them back 5 days in person per week. We'll be welcoming back about 249 kids, which represent about 70% of the student body of the school. And at Hickson Middle School, we will also welcome back approximately 480 kids, which represents 70% of the school, 5 days a week in person. The high school, this is the thing that we haven't communicated or publicized. We talked about we were working toward. We are going to be bringing back the high school students on November 11th, which is the same day that we do the Steger and Hickson students. Their return is going to look a little bit differently. And that difference is based on the number of classes at the high school that are in the upper 20s and some in the early 30s, over 150 classes that, and again, it's not necessarily the class size, but it's class size plus available space that allows us to determine whether we can have in-person classes safely meeting that desirable threshold. This right here is what the model looks like for that school. Right now, our students who have last names, and there are some different caveats for different groups of students, but overall our students who are A through K with the last name, they will come for in-person learning every morning, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday. They'll take their 4 classes, and then there'll be a kind of a lunch cleaning break in the middle of the day. They will transition home to do the rest of the day asynchronously. And then the L through Z students will come in at that particular point. While we do have some teachers that are certainly teaching the full block of time, a number of our courses at the high school level, like our middle school and our elementary, half the course period is designed to be asynchronous. So there won't be a dramatic loss in a number of the classes for that synchronous learning, that face-to-face, whether it be virtual or in person. But we do know that this is definitely something that will be impactful for some courses that will have to work around the loss of that face-to-face time. Wednesdays are a day when the teachers will be able to have the students for an extended period of time, their class in its entirety. And you kind of see what that schedule will look like here. This day is kind of similar to the day right now, the half day right now in our virtual program for all kindergarten through 12th grade students. The afternoon gives the teachers the time to work on their planning, which is important, especially since they're going to be designing learning opportunities for their time. They're not face-to-face with kids, which is an added burden, which is tough, which is challenging. It'll also be that time for them to be able to collaborate together. So this is what the high school schedule would look like. High school, I didn't say the numbers for the high school. Right now, we have about 1,100 students that are in the responsive learning plan. That represents almost 80% of the high school student body. So you would kind of cut that in half in terms of the return. I will state, like I did before, we don't have a slide related, that while this decision is being made purely because of the size of the classes and the size of the spaces for the students, it's not being made due to mitigation, just due to class sizes alone. It's kind of the factors of class size plus lack of space. Commitment, kind of like we had shared before, as we has asked families at the start of the year and communicated in some different ways that where do you want to be for the semester, plan for the semester, because if we are in the responsive learning plan, there's a chance that we could go back, and it will be our determination for when we go back. So just kind of want to reiterate that commitment at all of our levels. If somebody doesn't want to go come back and they're in that responsive plan, they have the opportunity to access other courses through Launch, through Edgenuity, different third-party vendors that our students have been accessing even before COVID hit. One of the things that we're going to be communicating over and over and over again, and already have in some ways, is that November 16th through the 23rd, we're going to reach back out to our families again and ask them to declare what they want to do for the second semester. You want to be a part of the responsive learning plan that is going to operate on one of those 3 tiers, more than likely 3 tiers, where we're in person, a hybrid version, or possibly virtual, or do you know for certain that you want your child in the virtual program? And then we will, at that point, undergo the major disruption, which is why we only need to do it once, of adjusting schedules, of adjusting class sizes, manipulating all of that for 4,700 people and 350 teachers, moving them into different environments. So that's the reason why we haven't done that along the way, is try to create as much stability as we can for the kids as well as the staff who are implementing our programs. So with that, I'm certain you have questions, and I will open it up and invite my team to jump in too.
So John, can I just
Well,
ask
I
one?
have quite a
just
few
relate-
questions. Is there a system you want to use to
Yeah,
try
sure.
to-
I had one just related to the last thing, and then I'm going to go around everybody, and we'll have sort of, a couple of questions each and go around. But just in terms of just that last slide you had up where you're asking people to make a choice, what if people do not respond? What is the default option?
The default option will be the responsive learning plan. And
Okay,
what we're
thank
going to do, so let me just tell you some of the, again, lessons learned all along the way. We'll be much better, heaven forbid there's a second pandemic. One of the things that we will do is while we communicated that the default would be responsive learning plan, one of the things that we're going to be able to do this time around is send out kind of personalized confirmation emails to everybody about this is the plan that you chose, and give a very small window of time for if you didn't choose this plan. We know we're going off the data that's submitted, but give them also another little window to undo that decision. There are a lot of factors that come into this. We have families sometimes where children, are like I was, had divorced families. There's not necessarily are separated, not plans in place. Trying to be mindful of all we learned the first time around to make it as clear as possible for families.
Thank you very much. So yeah, so what I'm going to do, I will go round. If everybody can, just sort of give everybody a chance, if everybody can limit themselves to sort of one question and a follow-up or two questions initially, and we'll go round and then we'll go round again and give everybody who hasn't had all their questions answered another chance. So Amy, why don't I let you go first?
Thanks, David. And I think this is going to be sort of a broad question, and I'm hoping that it'll ask some or perhaps answer some of the related questions. If you would go back, John, to the slide factors considered, and you don't necessarily need to, maybe you want to put it up for everybody, but
Yeah, I'll put it up.
you went through those bullet points, but I'd really appreciate hearing how those considerations, the consideration of each of those items led you to the decision to return kids full-time 5 days. Because just as I go through, and I'll just be candid, the ones that jump out to me, what is it about COVID-19 data now that says this is a good time to go back? Similarly, WAFC, I'm glad that we've had success with that, but that's an extremely limited number of kids. We cut class sizes considerably to make that work. And honestly, I'm just skeptical about how we're going to bring all the kids that we have in ixon and elementary schools and Steger back under the current circumstances. Likewise, activities and athletics. I know we've had positive tests there. So if you could just explain how these factors led you to the current recommendation, I think that would be helpful. And like I said, I think it'll answer a lot of sub questions maybe for me.
Sure. So I would say first with the COVID data, we continue to look at the data, and obviously not crazy with the past few weeks and seeing the uptick in some of the data as it relates to cases, some of the data as it relates to positivity rates. That said, so I think that's something that we have to continue to monitor, and we will. That said, when we continue to be in conversations with infectious disease experts, when we look at school districts who have implemented in-person learning, private schools that have implemented in-person learning, and some of the experts are better able than I to reference kind of national studies as well, is that regardless of whether you're hybrid, full day in person, and even as it relates to community transmission, the mitigation strategies that schools are able to employ to control the environment, the sanitizing, the masks, the space, the transmissions within the school are just not occurring. Do they occur? Yes, but they're very, very, very minimal. And so I think while the data, nobody likes to say the data go up. And is there a point where the data gets so high that we might consider not going out or going back out? Absolutely. The feeling is that we're not, and again, I'm talking to experts and I'm speaking like this is just me. But the feeling is that the change in the data won't lead to an increase in transmissions within our schools. Our schools will be much safer than going out. And so the lessons I think learned, not just from Ambrose, but again, the other school systems, is again that the measures that we put in place, we can keep kids and adults safe. I use the example of Ambrose, as I've said, at Ambrose, they put in different strategies where they blocked off the playground, where kids are having lunch at certain tables. It's just not developmentally appropriate for the kids to be like cornered off like we're doing at our other levels. And even with that, the data and the not transmission and all that stuff is really good. So that's kind of the data that we've seen. And we look at, for some perspective, and you could find this on the state's website. We have had, and we're talking about these groups going back since March. 16 kids in our school district boundaries, not just our school district, but our school district boundaries, that have tested positive. We've had 18 10 to 14 year olds. We've had 109 15 to 19 year olds. So again, those are kind of the data that we look at. And we also look at how our kids are doing academically, how are they doing social emotionally. And again, that looks, I think they're all being there. Well, it's a more favorable environment for some. There are a lot of being affected in a lot of different ways. And some, again, speaking to the inequity piece, a lot more than other people. So again, the steps that we're doing are working to prevent the transmission, which is the big thing. And until it's zero or it's really low, I don't think we'll ever we might ever be able to say it can't happen. So I don't know if that answered it, but we're looking and talking about it all the time.
So
I could ask
I'm
a
gonna
million follow-up questions, but I don't want to be
so yeah,
I don't want to
let's
be a
try to
Zoom
sort of
hog, so I will.
no, let's sort of try to get through, but certainly I recognize you probably have more. Joe.
So I guess this is kind of a follow-up to Amy's question. We know that our data, our COVID numbers are going up. I think we're looking at, hospitals going back to not doing elective procedures potentially, and things are kind of shutting down again, potentially. At least that's what in my work world I'm hearing. So I guess I'm just curious, at what point would you say we have to go back to being all virtual? I know that's a hard question, but data-wise, do we have like a number for that? I mean, I know it's confusing, I think, because so many districts around us, some have gone all virtual, some are going partial. I don't know which ones have gone back full-time that are doing well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ones that have gone back to full-time are doing well. Joe, I don't have like, what would the data be? I saw
before, like at those numbers, right? Like the transmission rate.
Yeah, and so having to consider what is our ability to mitigate transmission within our schools, and what's happening in society around us. So for example, I was going to give the example of Ireland. I read recently that they are seeing an uptick, and so they're putting measures in place in society and county that are more restrictive, like no going into restaurants and pubs, but still keeping schools open, prioritizing schools. So I think we have to be thoughtful about what is the county, what are the steps going on. That's another factor around us to help us to be able to stay safely in schools. Obviously, we've proven that we would be willing to go out without the county, because we did that the first time. The first time around we made the announcement, it wasn't the county telling us to do it. We did it. So we wouldn't have a problem doing it again. But at this point, we feel like we can safely have the kids back. And by safely, I mean, again, minimizing chance of transmission within our schools.
And
Our ability.
Go ahead.
But sorry.
I was just going to say, so the schools that we're looking at that have done it successfully, size-wise, are they comparable to our district?
I would say so. I would say, and I can't recite the numbers offhand, but I know, for example, the school district in Troy, and I don't remember the name of the actual district, forgive me. They are similar school districts, similar size. They have 5,000 students. And the procedures that they have had in place have had a really pretty positive effect. Some of the bigger school districts, we've also learned a lot from them, but again, they're bigger. The quarantine, that's the big thing. That's the thing that's really challenging for all those school systems, is the number of children and adults that are out on quarantine. And that's something that we've faced since the start, and we'll face even more as we move more kids back. Again, which could be a factor that would lead us. I know it led another district to determine we have to go back to the virtual environment due to our inability to staff the program because of quarantine, not necessarily cases.
Okay, Keita.
Are you able to speak at all regarding the process at Ixon? Are the kids still going to be on teams? Are they going to still be changing classes? I know the teams tend to be in certain areas. Are they going to stay at, like, how is that process going to work? And then my second question, if I'm allowed, or I can wait, was just going to be about transportation. That can wait or whatever.
I'm sorry, Keita, I didn't hear that second one.
Oh, the second question is about transportation, buses and things like that.
Yeah. So as far as Ixon, like the high school, the kids would still move. They would still move from class to class. Like all of our spaces, we would have the bottles of the disinfectant and the things to help kind of sanitize space in between. While touch has been shown to be minimal. I think Dr. Newland in his presentation said rare. We're still treating it seriously because we know that the possibility exists that through touch you can transmit. But it's infinitesimal, but we will be cleaning. Given the amount of times kids are transitioning and the procedures in place, there's not a lot of concerns from the experts regarding transition time. But those transitions will occur and they'll be mindfully done. One-way hallways, that kind of thing at both Ixon and the high school. With Steger, it's easier for them to, similar to the elementaries, have the teachers rotate to kind of keep the kids in that cohort and that space for the entire time. Transportation will still be available. That's one of those equity and access things to families that if that's your only way to get to school, then that will be available. We do have a student right now that is being transported from one particular area to Edgar Road. That's the transportation at the elementary from kind of the three non-contiguous zones in North Webster. They get transportation to Edgar Road. We do have a child being transported, and we'll likely have some being transported. We outline in our plan all the different safety practices on the bus in terms of, one child in a seat unless you're family members, kids entering on the back and coming forward, windows down. So there's a lot of those practices on the bus. We're not making anybody ride the bus, but we are still providing it because we feel it's an important equity and access thing.
Christine. You're muted.
Sorry, I have a problem using my cursor when my video is on. Thanks, John, and thanks to the flexibility of everybody in the district. I've been watching Mrs. Mosley right across the street from me have her students in her music class come out onto the lawn, and she's got them all spaced apart and chairs ready for them outside. It's awesome.
That is awesome.
I wanted to kind of go back to what Amy and Joe were asking. And so, I'm hearing you talk about the data, but I'm wondering who makes the decision? And is it that, as we're looking at transmission rates, would we be looking at closing a school or the district? And is that you making that decision if transmission rates get high, or are we waiting for the county public health officials to come and tell us this?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, currently the decision's mine to make. However, if the county said, we're taking a step back, because we've only moved once the county health officials, who are in partnership with a different group of some of the medical people and some of the superintendents have made the decision for reentry into schools. So if that body and those officials said you need to go the other direction, we would absolutely go the other direction. But kind of the first time I should say, we jumped to the virtual program. It was the decision. It was the decision of the superintendents to make. So.
And again, by district, or is it ever possible by grade level or by school?
It's definitely possible by level, by school. The data that we have, the county has given us some data in terms of when they are suggesting that we would close is 5%, and this is in a school or the district, 5% in any single day, 4% test over 2 days in a row, 3% test positive for 3 days in a row. They would recommend close for 10 days. I would think we would probably be considering or moving towards closure before we got to that personally, but that's what they're suggesting at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, I guess one of my questions, because looking at the high school, one of the things that went into it was the class sizes being on the upper 20s to low 30s, and that's why you decided to kind of do the hybrid approach in the high school. Just curious what the class sizes are in Hickson and the 6th grade.
Yeah. At Hickson, I'll start with Steger. At Steger, they are in the low 20s. I have 24 in one of the classes, but they're in the low 20s. At Hickson, the classes vary. We did have some core content classes that go as high as 27. But what we've done is we're looking at numbers and we're looking at space. And so we knew that we couldn't, when we're in those classes, like we can't do it. We can't do it in these classes. So what are things that we can do? Well, we can move teachers in classes. That's a strategy that we've used in the K-2 classes. So we've had kindergartens that have switched classrooms with 2nd grade based on the size of the class and the number of kids in the class. That's something that we have to do and we'll do. And what Hickson is also looking at doing is shifting some of their schedules around. So you could have, for example, a science class, maybe, and I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if this is the class to do that, but I know we have science classes of 27, and you may have other science classes of 20. And so looking at kind of moving kids, being thoughtful with that move, who might be able to move from one section to another, just to make sure that we're getting class sizes down reasonably. What's been shared with me from Hickson is that they have a goal of 21, and that if they can't meet that goal, that they would move to a bigger space to have class. So again, it's a movement, it's a disruption, but it's inevitable.
Alan?
And thanks, Dr. Simpson. I guess my first question would be, Dr. Simpson, can you speak to, I'm thinking particularly about the high school, which is going to be the only school that's back differently than the other levels. Were the teachers sort of involved in creating this schedule and plan, and sort of what was their involvement in this process?
Yeah, with the teachers, I know that Dr. Irvin involved. He's got a department chair team that has kind of been working with him all along the way, giving their thoughts and ideas and feedback to the plan. I met with that team 2 days ago, also just to kind of listen to them and see what their thoughts and concerns might be related to it. And so that's the team that he's used the most there.
All right, well, we're going to go round again. I think it's probably, if that works for everybody. Amy?
I'm going to try to sneak in 2 questions here.
Yeah,
Okay, so
there's
the
a
first
surprise.
one, the first one is going back to Hickson and Steger, primarily Hickson. Why now? And one thing that I have concerns about, and I know others do as well, is the fact that those classes, unlike elementary, operate on a semester basis. So why come back in mid-November when there's only 5 weeks left until the end of the semester, as opposed to reassessing the situation and starting back live or not in January?
Yeah, I think it's, Amy, it's the benefit of the in-person learning, and the kids that I think it's, I'm not saying it's all kids, because it's not all kids, but I think there's no substitute for the in-person experience. And I think that there are a lot of kids that are really struggling, not just academically, but on a social emotional level too. And so I think getting the kids back sooner rather than later for their own health is a really important thing. Yeah, it's not a natural transition. It would be a more natural transition, but I mean, that's the reason why. It's definitely for the kids and their well-being. And I would say,
sneak your second question in.
Well, I was just going to comment. I have as you all know, a Hickson student who is working on her letter to the Board of Education and Superintendent as we speak, detailing the mental health toll that this takes on her and her classmates. So don't for a second think that I take these decisions lightly, or that I don't understand that that is a real consideration.
Yeah.
I think I've also been pretty consistent since the beginning of this in saying that, we're potentially talking about life and death situations here. And obviously that's most important. Having a hard time with the idea of putting all of Hickson students back in a building, particularly with that building being under construction. I'm not sure where they're going to get the space to do the distancing that they're able to do at the elementary levels. And that's not really a question, that's just a comment.
Yeah, appreciate it. We've been over there. I will say that they have done it themselves, but I've been over there multiple times, as I know a number of staff members have seen, and my team's been over with tape measure, just looking at spaces. As you know, 2 of my most precious gifts in the world walk into, the given Steger school every day, which will have 250 more kids in it, and a daughter that'll walk into 8th grade. So again, I think similar decision would be made without that, similar care, but it's always different when you have kids in there. You always think about your kids. So, so I do think, again, I feel confident in that the space is there. And if for some reason, if that were to change and we wouldn't think that we would safely do it, we would undo it. We would undo this decision, or if we felt otherwise. I've gotten a lot of support from a lot of people. I've got a lot of criticism to a lot of people. And so I have no problem fielding the criticism of undoing a decision if I feel that a change in my decision or our direction is needed. So. And I do think
go ahead.
I just wanted to add to the mental health of people. And I thought about this after a call today with some other teacher groups at the middle levels. But as we know, like, our teachers are killing it. They're working so hard to try and care for our kids. And I think overall they're doing a really great job. But as I was processing after the call, I was thinking that as great as our teachers at Hickson have been, and I've been amazed at how well they know Addison. They were so impressed with me during the conference. It's really impossible to get to know her like the Steger teachers did, or the elementary teachers did, because it's not that walking into the room, you know, asking about the football or whatever it is. She didn't play football. I don't know why I said that. But it's just different. It's just different. And it's had to be, and it may have to be where we go. But it does add to that effectiveness as a teacher, and also that social emotional well-being of the child, which, especially at these middle levels, is kind of is a hard time. So again, I know you get it, Amy, and everybody.
Joe.
So I guess just a comment. I think it's hard because obviously every district is looking at the same data and they're all making different decisions, which I think just makes it that much harder to know what the right decision is, because obviously everyone's interpreting the data as best they can, but we're all coming up with different solutions.
Yeah. And Joe, that does, and what I would say is there are different contexts, different circumstances in some places, and then there's different factors maybe influencing whether there's a lot of possibilities for why that is. And yeah, it's real easy when the county comes out and says close or don't close or well, I guess close, but so that is a challenge. I do know that there are a lot of people, sometimes your circumstance determines where you are. Like for example, without reciting, there's some that started hybrid that would love to be able to move to in-person, but kind of based on where their structure is at the time, they can't. So it's not necessarily that they want to, it's that they can't. And then there's some, you know, that feel like, you know, based on the data, based on the zip code, based on where they are, that they just don't feel comfortable doing it. And whether that's whoever that is making that decision in that particular district. So you're right. It's not real clean and it's not real easy. Kind of like your question earlier about, so when exactly would we come back or when exactly would we go out? You didn't ask for that level of precision, but that wondering.
So my other question is in terms of the contact tracing and testing. So when you look at the numbers, right, for our district, for our area, you know, we know that there's a lot of kids that aren't getting tested.
True.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
So if you are doing contact tracing and you know someone's been exposed, is that testing mandatory?
Sandy, I will invite our contact tracing expert to get in and also answer all the contact tracing questions. Dr. Wiley Skinner.
I thought I unmuted myself. I'm sorry.
Did you hear the question, Sandy?
I did, and I'm going to try to answer it. If not, Joe, let me know. But definitively, it's dependent upon the doctor. So for some
department mandating,
the health department is not mandating that with an exposure, because an exposure could be if you and I were together and I think I have it and you call the health county department, but I'm not certain I have it, they may not request that you be tested. But if I know definitively I have it, they will require it. Okay. But then it is still up to the individual to go and get tested, which has been in some instances, I think you just said a moment ago, some people are refusing to be tested. However, the county is requiring for those individuals that are considered a direct contact or who have tested positive, those tested positive people, they are requiring for them to get a doctor's note from the county to return. So that's kind of been the caveat, so we can kind of catch those people to say if we need some kind of notification to say you are able to return to work. But there are some people who do not want to be tested.
So can we not require that as a condition of coming back into the schools, whether it's for an employee or a student, that if they know, we know they've been exposed to someone that was positive, that they can't return until they have a negative COVID test?
We require that they cannot return unless they have a medical documentation saying that they're safe to return. We require that, yes.
But we don't require that they have a negative test.
If they tested positive, yes.
We do, okay.
Yes. If they tested positive, yes. Now the county provides that and we can only take that from the county. And to be honest, there's been a little bit of a delay because there's just so much going on. So some people have sat out a little bit longer than what they would like to, but If you test positive, you are not able to return without a clearance from the county saying that you can.
Okay. But if you and I go to lunch and you test positive, I could choose not to get tested. And as long as I can call my next door neighbor that's a doctor and get them to write me a note, I can come back.
No, no. So if we're together, and I test positive, and then, so when we call county, we're going to provide county your name, Joe Dahl. County's going to reach out to you. And then we're going to say that you cannot come back unless you have met whatever those county
Okay, gotcha.
parameters are. Yeah, yeah. But
Thank
some
you.
people were still going to say, I don't want to be tested.
Right.
And so that county and them are kind of figuring that through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? Not related to testing or contact tracing.
Sure, go ahead.
It's a quick question. So if people choose to stay virtual, but they originally were responsive learning, and so now they're going to do it through whatever system we have out there that we've used in the past, do we have some kind of support for those families?
Yeah, that's what Dr. Dimbo is helping with families with everything related to it. And we've told people that you're not, when you access those particular providers, it's not like the school, you're still a Webster student. Like if you were getting reading support, if you had an IEP, like those teachers are all still working with you.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
that support is still there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sure. You say you had something else you wanted to ask, Amy?
Oh, I'm sorry, I think I lost connectivity there for a second. Are you talking about the MOCAP, the virtual programs?
Yeah.
Will they let you join? I didn't think you could join those mid-semester.
You can.
You can now?
Yeah.
And they'll teach the course that the kids had been taking at Webster, or they'll teach their version of it?
Well, I mean, it's all aligned to the, Jason, do you want to jump in? Come
Sure,
on.
I can say that they do have many course offerings. Do they have every single course that Webster Groves High School is offering? They do not. And so that will be a part of the decision-making that a family will have to think about if that is the option that they want to pursue.
So let's say my child is taking, 8th grade ELA, right? And I don't want her to return after, on November 5th. What does she do then?
So typical courses like 8th grade ELA, algebra, US history, those are offered through Launch. It would be some of our more specialty electives that would not necessarily.
But then how would that transition work in terms of like, she's already done X amount of work through Webster? Does that get counted? I'm just not clear on how that would work.
Sure. So technically, to my understanding, they would be starting a new course through Launch that would be completed by the end of this semester. So it's not that the Webster Groves work would count toward their MOCAP course. They would be initially starting a new course for the remainder of the semester.
And would we consider letting kids, again, this goes back to this whole somewhat random November 5th date when it's near the end of the term, and this is a John question, probably not a Jason question, would we consider letting kids who want to stay virtual, because I think they might reasonably think that the numbers aren't really looking good to send them back to school right now. Would we consider letting them finish their semester's work with Webster virtually, and then make a decision, obviously for next semester, if they had to do MOCAP, they would do MOCAP.
So right now, all of our kids in the virtual program, they'll stay virtual.
I'm talking about the kids that are in responsive.
Okay. So then they would.
It just seems a shame to have to make a kid like restart a class when there's only 5 weeks left in the semester at the point we're talking about returning.
And also, are you trying to do then a semester class in 5 weeks?
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, and it's a little bit different. I don't truthfully, I don't know exactly how that situation plays out, and we can come back to you. It's more complicated at the high school with minutes and credits and stuff like that. But it's the alternative to, what we're able to offer with ELA taking place. So yeah, I can't answer that question truthfully.
Can I jump in there real quick?
Yeah.
So some of the information with going from Webster to like a program like Launch, I know that we provided, or I worked with Dr. Denbo and provided her with some data points based on what the kids had covered. So that was then provided to launch to then make sure that they were trying to place the student at the appropriate spot in that course. So it wasn't them starting completely from the very beginning. It was starting from where they had data points and content based on the standards for that, either grade level or content strand. So I don't know if that helps with some of the information, but we were providing them with data points so that they could place the child in a more appropriate spot. So it wasn't starting the course from scratch.
It does make sense. Thank you. And that would be encouraging, I think, for, let's say you're taking a year-long course and you're going to go from being in the Webster virtual program to doing launch or whatever next semester. But I would respectfully ask that we consider letting kids who are in responsive learning resume their first semester. You know, they've worked hard all semester despite the, you know, terrible circumstances. It seems just really unfair to ask them to have to retake a course from the beginning via launch, when again, we're only talking about 5 weeks. So that would be my ask.
Thank you.
Keita.
Just so I can kind of be clear on this as well, because it sort of relates to one of my questions. So I'm guessing, so if I'm a high school student and I'm taking ELA and I decide to stay home, I get placed into launch. Am I good so far? I get placed at a point. If we've studied A, B, C, and D, then I get placed at point E and I continue on. And then I guess the two different things will get merged, and that's my grade or credit or what have you. Am I understanding that correctly?
Jason, can you speak to that?
Sure. So to my understanding, with the grade, it's not necessarily taking Webster's grade. It's more based on course completion with where they're at with the launch course. So they would end up getting, a student who's completely enrolled in launch doesn't get a Webster Groves report card. They get a report card through the launch program operating side. Even though they're a Webster Groves school district student, they're operating outside of the Webster Groves School District. In terms of their grade report, their credit, and all of that will transfer to Webster Groves School District in the long run.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sort of, kind of. I'm assuming that both will then go on transcripts. I'm kind of looking at juniors and seniors that are starting to look for, okay. Will there be any options available for those kids who have really struggled in virtual settings? Like, will there perhaps be, say I'm a junior and I've struggled and now I'm getting down to the point where it might be looking iffy as far as, you know, graduation. Will there be extra classes offered over the summer? Is there any sort of way to try to help with catch up type things with all this back and forth? And I'm on launch, I'm in Webster, I'm, you know, on YouTube, what?
Sure. So, Keita, I think you were finished. You've frozen up a little bit. To me anyway. I'm not sure if everyone else is.
Yeah, me too.
With that, as we look at the summer, as we look at any special programming, I'm happy to say that we obviously consider all that we can to do to support all of our kids. As far as planning that far in advance, I have not had a chance to do that yet, but obviously.
Jason, you went out.
I can't hear you, Jason.
Sorry about that. I was saying at this point, I haven't, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
At this point, we have not planned for the summer yet, but I would be happy to entertain and happy to plan forward and happy to think through how we can best support all of our kids as a result of this experience that we're having. So yes, I would be happy to entertain that.
And I just wanted to add to that was something that we brought forward, I think last time, where children that were struggling and had a particular indicators where they were struggling in the virtual environment, we invited them into our schools to be a part of that support, kind of the monitor program. So we have children in our elementary schools through our high school who are currently being supported in that particular way. Certainly very mindful of all of them, but it's, you know, thinking of those high schoolers with the credit and graduation and that kind of thing. So we've had students back in our schools, like at Webster Groves High School, for, I don't know, 4 weeks maybe. It's been a little while.
I was aware of that. I'm just thinking, with all the back and forth and the possibilities of even more back and forth, you know, how would we, are we kind of thinking into the future as far as helping some of them be able to graduate? I mean, you know, to me, that was confusing. I think I get what Tim was saying as far as getting into launch and this, that, and the other, but I'm like, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. When you look at, and that's one of those big reasons to bring our children back. When you look at, and I've seen, I can't recite the data at this point, but when you look at the number of D's and F's high schoolers are having, not just across the region and at Webster Groves, it's a pretty sizable number. It's more than we typically have. And a lot of that is definitely due to not being in front of the kids every day, not having the support, not having the counselor readily available. That's part of the really big inequity of this situation. Really one of those data points or information for getting our kids back in front of us. And so that's the kids that are maybe on, I don't know if extreme is the right word, but it really in dire and you know, need to be in, but there's a whole lot that also need to be back for those reasons.
Can I just, I'm going to interject a question here, if that's all right. Back to Amy's question. So with 5 weeks left, why don't we just, I know that we don't have necessarily the swivel cameras that go around and things like that, but why don't you, for the kids who need to be at home for those last 5 weeks, who've done the first X weeks of the semester, why don't you just offer that class as video with whatever quality you can get, put whatever cameras you can get up there. So at least give them the option that instead of switching over to this brand new program, you can go and they can sort of watch the class on video. I don't think it's high school here. And equally, I mean, can we not look to go and get the swivel camera? If the swivel cameras are the issue as to why we can't give people a virtual option for a regular class, so if perhaps people get sick or they're told to be quarantined for second semester, why can't we go and get some of those swivel cameras? But in the short run, why don't we just at least offer video as an option so people have a choice?
Can I back that up a little bit, David? I'm sorry, and I know I'm being pushy. I have a work obligation and I really don't want to leave this conversation, but I just would appreciate a little bit of clarity before I have to jump off.
Sure.
So I'm feeling like, and I this isn't presented to us as a anything that we're going to vote on. This is obviously what the plan is. I personally, just stepping back from that issue, that to me, David, about transitioning from Webster virtual learning to launch or whatever else, that's one of many issues, questions that I'm feeling like are not resolved. I think there are a lot of others. I'm wondering if we could have a follow-up conversation where we could get some additional information about those types of issues, and issues such as one thing we haven't talked about is why are we not recommending hybrid at Ixon as well? That's something we haven't talked about yet. I think that would be a reasonable alternative. And again, at the end of the day, I'm just struggling with what the numbers are now, and having made this decision in August when they were better. And you know, we've all heard from teachers who have many questions at all buildings. And I would feel better if we had answers to more of those questions before we move back into the in-person world that I know we all really want to get to.
Okay.
So maybe it's just me. If nobody else has questions.
Okay, so let me do this. So let me do this then. Okay, so I'm going to go around and get sort of, and Amy, I know you've got to leave, and thank you very much for what you've done. I think one of the things when we're done with this discussion, one of the things I'd put to the board is, should we be scheduling a follow-up meeting where the board sort of submits the questions that they've got, where if members of the public have questions, parents, students have questions that they want, that we submit all of those and we go and put together a special board meeting specifically designed to address those questions, and we try to get that. I would suggest we try to get that sometime next week. So before all of this is happening, and we can talk about that as a board. When we do, let's finish doing questions as we've got. But I'd also be interested in whether people think that that is a good step, or whether people are sort of comfortable with what's going on. And Amy, I know you have to leave, so if you've got a comment, I'll just let you make it before I know you've got to leave for your other obligation.
Yeah, thanks, David. I appreciate it. And I think I've made it clear. I definitely have additional questions. And now my cat's walking across the video. That's fine. Hello.
All right. Okay, Christine. I apologize. It was your turn to ask a question and I jumped in.
Yeah. So I asked my husband if it was okay to share, but my father-in-law is currently in the hospital and has been in the hospital with COVID for over a week. And it's serious, and he's on a path to recovery, but it's not an easy one. And, I thank you, John, for letting us listen to Dr. Newland, the presentation he gave. And I guess I just have kind of two questions, a question and a comment related to that. One, I just want to reiterate what you said about, we can't tough it out anymore. We all have probably sent kids when they probably should not have gone with fevers or with headaches, maybe not fevers, with headaches or with sniffles. And we just can't do that anymore. Thinking like you can tough it out, you can be fine, you're going to be fine. We just cannot do that. And we all have to think about community. And so, I want to think about our 3 to 5 kids who are going to be going back on later this month, and just ensuring that they have information and their families have information that allows them to keep their kids, their teachers, the schools, and our community safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alex.
I just have just a question on the A through K portion of, so just the high school and starting with the same group in the morning and the other group in the evening, or not in the evening, in the afternoon. Is there any flexibility to that? And the only reason that I ask is just given that some, or more so, what's the thought there? Because some students might do better in the morning than in the afternoons, but I also understand how families just consistency is probably for the best. So
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I think that some level of flexibility would exist there. It's a straight numbers thing, kind of divide the median, divide in the middle as best you can, not class by class necessarily. Obviously, you couldn't do that. But I do think that there would be circumstances where that flexibility, where the need genuinely existed, not necessarily the choice or the preference, because I think a lot of people would probably, high schoolers would probably choose the afternoon. But I mean, there's the asynchronous piece in the morning too. But
well, John, sorry. I guess what I mean is could you start with A through K Monday and Tuesday, and then they would be in the afternoon Thursday and Friday?
Oh, you could.
That's what you meant.
You could. Sorry about that. Yeah, I guess you could. There are some challenges with schedule, some of the special schedules with kids that go to different schools. We have kids that go to different technical schools. We have classes like Thrive that are all kind of planning around a lot of those different specialty classes and courses. But I'll at least bring that idea to the high school. And is it possible to split that up?
But presumably you're going to have students who fall into the second half of the alphabet or the first half of the alphabet who are doing the same things. I mean, you're basically going to have to repeat the thing twice probably for the same students just because you've done it alphabetically. So I'll be interested to hear what your answer is back there.
Yeah, also what we're also talking about is, just as we think of all things, we're also thinking about fiscally. So we're talking about things like having the kids who are going to take buses for them to be in the afternoon session, because if they're in an activity or an athletic, it would make sense for them to be in the afternoon and be able to stay, as opposed to send them home and bring them back or have them stay at the high school. So there's a lot of different specialty circumstances that are being thoughtfully considered along the way.
Okay. Alan?
So thinking about some of these spaces and the kids moving around, will things like computer labs be open? Like, how will things like that work? Like where there might be kids coming in and out during periods. Will those spaces be open? And what's the sanitation procedures?
Yeah, there won't be a lot of shared spaces open unless the need exists. So there would have to be a clear need. That's why like elementary school kids are all eating in their classrooms.
Yeah.
So we're getting that space where we can. So if we don't have to share space, we don't. That's why the Steger kids are all eating. Our teachers are rotating, not kids rotating. At some of our upper levels, it's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, John, I'm going to go back to the question that I had asked that then Amy had something she wanted to say before she left. So videoing, offering a video option for the last 5 weeks of the semester when people go back, and then a timetable potentially to go and get swivel cameras so you can offer something viable, a viable video alternative of in-class lessons.
So we could do the video. That hasn't been an expectation due to the technology that we have in the classrooms, and then the expectation for the teacher to be mindful of kids in both those settings, and just kind of, you could see what my computer is right now. I'm sitting at a desk. This would be as good as it gets. Like a lot of our high school teachers have desktops, so we wouldn't necessarily think we could probably do a Chromebook, but you're really going to be pretty limited in what you can do. And so we have communicated, and hasn't been the expectation that would be the case. But if we've kind of left it, so it hasn't been the expectation. Swivel and OWL technology, we have looked at it. We're also mindful of our budget, which is certainly taking a decent hit with everything as it relates to COVID, which is why one of our fundraisers is with trying to raise money for additional technology. But when you're talking about a swivel or an OWL, you're talking about $1,000 to $1,600 per teacher. And that money's just not there. And at this point, I'm not certain the technology is there as far as those devices.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead, Keita.
David, this actually kind of goes with your question. That's why I'm trying to jump in.
No, absolutely.
Are the classes being recorded? Like, can they just simply be recorded to where the students can have access to them later? I mean, if it's a Zoom class, the teachers are, I'm assuming, sharing their screens, much like we do in these meetings. Can they be recorded? I mean, that might be helpful to everyone, because then everyone could have access to go back to take notes or do what have you in the classes.
They're being recorded, correct me if I'm wrong, they're being recorded right now in the virtual environment. But that would require me, the teacher, to be teaching, however many kids out here, but to still be like right here with this group. So could it be done? Yes. I personally wouldn't see why we would bring kids back if we would be doing it that way. But Jason, do you want to jump in?
I was just going to share what you shared, that they are being recorded at this time because we are in a virtual environment. But with the live instruction, the plan wasn't at this point to record that live instruction and post it into Canvas for.
So my sense, and maybe I'm wrong, I know you're much closer to the other superintendents at the other public schools, but my sense was that some of the other public schools were doing more in terms of what Keita and I are suggesting here. I know some of the private schools are doing that, and I know the private schools have different resources than the public schools do, but I thought I'd heard that some of the public schools were doing this as well. So what are you aware of within the rest of the public school community?
There are some situations where we were pretty upfront with people, which is why we're kind of taking some of the stance that we take. It's pretty upfront with people of, here's a virtual program. You know, if you know you're going to want to be virtual for the semester, and certainly people's opinions change, but I've articulated on multiple occasions the disruption that it would cause, that pick this program. And then if you want the possibility of coming back, be here. There are some districts that didn't do that. They didn't think that they would be in a spot where they would be going back. And so they didn't divide up their teaching staffs. They didn't divide up their courses. And so the solution has to be, there's no other way if you're wanting to come back at that point, especially at the upper level high school, to do anything but utilize that technology to make that happen. So again, I don't think a lot of them would tell you that it's an ideal or something that they would design or do if they were in our circumstance. Some might, but some of it's just out of circumstance where you are right now.
Okay. I'm conscious that I may see things differently, but at the same time, we hire you to go and make these decisions, not me. You're responsible for this day to day, and I think there's a danger that I at least sort of start to try to micromanage your job, which is never going to be terribly efficient. So I'll try to stop doing that. Keita, you sound like you had something else you wanted to say.
Well, I kind of wanted to throw this out here as well. I heard someone mention it in another meeting that I was in before, and could there be a thought, since classes are being recorded, say students have to be quarantined or they test positive or what have you, would they be able to better follow along from home if the classes are recorded, or do they do lunch? Do they just not do school? Like, what happens in a scenario like that?
Well, and that's like with high school, it's a little bit easier, that's still being processed. So technically, yeah, you could probably flip on the camera and it's probably better than nothing. I know that the uploading of the videos is something our teachers and staff aren't crazy about, but that could be a solution. I think we also have to think about, yeah. So that would be a possibility, but that at this point hasn't been the expectation. So,
thank you. I just didn't know if that had been thought about. I'm assuming it has. I'm assuming everything has been thought about.
Well, and again, we're continuing to develop things as we go. So things are changing. We're doing things today that we didn't think a week ago we'd be doing necessarily. So right. Open to any kind of thoughts regarding.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm going to give Alex and Alan a chance to ask questions, and then I'm just going to throw it open for everybody. So if that works. So Alex?
Yeah, so are there any concerns or any thoughts around, I guess, the arrival and release, especially at Hickson elementary schools when it's K through 5? Have you considered staggered start times or anything like that?
Yeah.
And release times?
Thank you. I do know that I can't speak to all the elementaries, but that's a procedure that we talked about a whole lot, arrival and dismissal, and most recently with Steger and Hickson. So I do know that the procedures at Steger in the past, it would be just kind of pull up whether you're a Givens parent or a Steger parent, but they're kind of redoing that whole structure to have the Givens students in one space and the Steger people in one space. If you have children in both schools, then you would default to one or the other. So very mindful of that. There's not congregating at both. For example, Steger and Hickson used to be able to go in, and there used to be space for you to kind of gather before going to class. So that's not in place. You'll go straight to class. Hickson will have a staggered dismissal where they'll be dismissing people by teams. And that consideration is definitely something that's important. It does help with the number of students that are not in school, makes the procedures better. But again, we're still mindful of that. So yeah, we are doing that where we can and need to.
Alan?
So, just thinking a little bit about the construction at Hickson. I'm thinking particularly about the spaces with the library and the cafeteria, although I'm not sure how much the cafeteria is affected by construction right now. I haven't been that close to know, but can you sort of speak to what lunch will look like and sort of what the construction does to the schedule and the space a little more specifically?
Yeah. I would say that the construction, it definitely doesn't help us any because we've lost classrooms there. We have to modify arrival and dismissal type procedures at the school, which we would have to do anyway, right? So those are some of the things that we planned with, COVID or not, and it does impact where people go and our use of other spaces. So at lunch, in order for us to get the 6 feet at Hickson with our students, we're having to use the cafeteria, we're having to use the auditorium, and we're having to use other unused at that time classroom spaces in order to get that 6 feet, which is a priority to us if kids' mask comes off. So that's an example of kind of the impact of the construction in some of those spaces. Hickson teachers were wondering about the parking because our contractors have been using the parking lot, but they'll be parking kind of inside the construction site moving forward once the kids come back.
So David, can I squeeze in a related question?
Absolutely, go for it.
I know I asked specifically about Hickson, but is there any other construction related concerns at any of the other campuses with the safety projects at the elementary schools or anything? In terms of
I would
losing
say,
space?
yeah, I would say no. I would say overall that there's not. There is some space at Bristol that is behind in terms of its development, classroom spaces, but adjustments have been made. And Pam, can you think of anything, any impact?
No, the only other thing would be the minor impact of at Edgar Road. Some of the parking spaces are taken up because of the construction, but that's just a minor issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm gonna let me just sort of get the feeling. So I suspect board members still have other questions. So as I said, I think we can do this one of two ways. We can carry on with the questions that we've got, and actually don't think it precludes the second thing, which is we can equally we can sort of gather the questions that we still have along with questions I know that are coming in from other stakeholders, and perhaps set up a follow-up meeting where we can specifically go and address those. So can I just get a sense from the board as to how you'd like to carry on sort of with this? Do you want to ask like a couple of questions? Do you want to carry on asking questions now and sort of be done with it today? Do you want to ask some questions now and then potentially have a follow-up, or do you want to sort of put this to one side and sort of have a follow-up, probably early next week? If I can just sort of ask people just to sort of chime in with their thoughts about that. And if there's another alternative I haven't thought about, please sort of throw that out as well.
I would like to ask a couple more questions, but I also would like a follow-up.
Okay.
Can be.
All right. What are other people's thoughts just about that? And then I'll come back to you for your questions in a second, Joe. Christine, what do you think? Same.
I think it would be helpful to have another meeting early next week, and maybe we could talk about what we would want to hear. And I don't really have any more. Well, I have one more question maybe.
Okay, well, we'll do that. Keita?
The same. I would be fine with a follow-up, and then that,
okay.
There might be some more information available or even more questions thought up by then.
Alex?
I don't need a follow-up, but if we're gonna vote to have one, it's fine. I guess I'm okay with the district. We've kind of given the reins to the district at this point, and if we have questions, by all means. But I feel like I don't need a follow-up.
Alan?
I'm okay with the follow-up. I don't have a ton more questions that I need to ask, sort of similar to Alex, but I'm totally okay with the follow-up meeting.
Okay. And John, I apologize. I'm potentially going to drop this on you. And what I'd suggest for that is we won't need to have your entire, well, we won't need to have your entire team, I say, but then on the other hand, we're probably going to need sort of, based on where the questions come, we may need a lot of your team. So we'll work to try to do that. So I think what we'll do then is let's deal with questions people may have now that they feel are important to get addressed right now. Any that you think that can wait, let's plan on submitting by sort of email. You'll still have another chance to ask if when we get together again, you'll have a chance to ask other questions you may have. You're not precluding yourself, but if we can get those in advance, you just leave Dr. Simpson and his team in a better position to respond if they know what they're going to be asked in advance. It's just be much more efficient. So I think we'll go with that. So I'm just going to go around everybody and they just let them get through whatever questions they've got left. So Joe.
Okay, I just have one question, and I've heard a concern from some high school parents, and I think it's a legitimate concern. So I guess I'm just curious your thoughts on this, John. So like we originally took the year-long classes, right, and we condensed them into one semester, and they were doing like I think 90-minute in the online, and now we've cut that in half, and now they're going to be doing 45 minutes with the teachers. So we've taken the year-long, made it one semester, and now we've cut it in half again. Do we feel like they're going to get adequate learning from that?
Good question. I would say that, you know, for most of the classes, like with all of the levels, we kind of designed the block of time that kids would be with teachers, students would be with teachers, for half of it to be synchronous and half of it to be asynchronous. So if you think of it that way, I would say the majority of teachers, if the teachers that were doing that, the time would be the same. It would just be where that time is for the synchronous and the asynchronous. There are
90-minute classes at this point.
So it's 90 minutes now.
Right.
Okay. But if it's 45 minutes in the morning and then 45 minutes asynchronous in the afternoon. So that is what in a lot of the classes, what it will look like. There are some classes where some teachers keep them the full amount of time. So I do think that in those classes, I do think that it's definitely sacrifice. There's no doubt about it, sacrifice. And I've spoken with the teacher about it a few times. Some of the AP classes, it's a challenge because of the content. So it's one of those, you know, we are in pretty interesting times right now, and there are a lot of sacrifices all around. So that would definitely be one for some kids in some courses, no doubt about it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Keita, any sort of nagging questions now?
Nothing really nagging. And really this can be followed in the follow-up meeting. I just kind of wanted some more information about transportation, and maybe that hasn't even been worked out yet. Transportation schedules, and John, you kind of touched on that a little bit, saying that some of the kids that do after school activities at the high school may be afternoon. So yeah, those are the kind of logistics that I was and scheduling and that kind of thing. Construction, yeah, a lot of these can wait till our next meeting.
I'm happy to answer any of them. Any child who needs transportation, and there are a lot of different circumstances for that, will have the opportunity to be transported with measures in place that most public transportation companies are using today. But follow up with me, Keita, next meeting, offline, anything. Happy to answer.
Okay. My only other concern really is about the teachers. I'm always worried about what they're thinking. Bless their hearts. I don't know what it would be like to be a teacher during these times. And all of this has to be scary. And I quite frankly had not heard, Joe, you just scared me to death, that there were people who were refusing to take tests. And that has got to be terrifying, because now I'm terrified. So I, bless their hearts. I'm concerned about the teachers as well as the kids.
Yeah, I would say that teachers, like they've been all along, are in different places all along, the threshold, just like everyone in this particular chat is in a different spot. And I will say that I was interviewed recently that three, I don't know if I remember, it was concerns or what it was emerging from COVID. And one of them was retention of high quality teachers. And that is just due to the extraordinary burden, the pressure, now more than before, criticism that they're facing trying to make magic happen with a whole lot of kids. And it's really, it's especially hard like this. So that's my worry, is wanting to keep our best, not just in Webster, keeping all of our teachers, but also it's around the region, around the country. So again, they've been involved in different ways in part of this process. It's never been a vote. It's been kind of clear that it's kind of a decision of mine to make post the last board meeting, and that we're very mindful of it. And that's a factor. Their thoughts and feelings are factored into everything, and kids will always be our center. But their concern, their health, their practice is really important to us, to me. So.
Christine?
Thank you. I think what I'm hearing is that there might be some trepidation that some families who originally chose responsive might not trust the district. I've listened and I've read all of your information. I trust the district to make the right decisions and to make the right decisions for kids. But I think this underscores the importance of that survey that parents will be asked to fill out between November 16th and November 23rd to let you know what they want in the spring, because this isn't going anywhere.
Right.
And I wanted to ask then, will Dr. Newland's presentation be shared with the district, or will you put get together a presentation similar to that for families?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely include that in our next correspondence.
Okay.
I do think, again, he is at the epicenter of leadership within the region, and somebody I've had the opportunity to be in Zooms like this and then hear speak on bigger things, along with others, that is a big factor for the decision making. So I will make sure to include that. I was thinking about that, and I appreciate that nudge.
Thanks.
Alex, any last thoughts for now? Okay, thank you. Alan?
All right, thanks. Everything Keita said, yes. And then I did have two other questions, but fortunately Joe asked one of them with the curriculum time. So thank you, Joe, for taking that one off my list. I appreciate that. And Christine sort of touched on my last question, but with that survey going out November 16th through the 23rd, and then potentially high school and everybody not starting back until the 11th, I feel like that's a little bit of a short turnaround time for those people in particular, and really for all people, knowing how much things could change between now and the end of the year. Is there any way to give families a little more time to respond to that survey? I know we need time to plan and do all we need to do, but I'm a little concerned about that window.
Yeah, there's really not, unless we so let me give you a little bit of the timeline. Okay, so what we're thinking on that. So the survey would go out November 16th, and our thought was that would give, before we were thinking that would give parents who opted for, or kids who were coming back to those different levels to kind of experience what the school experiences would be like. We'd leave that open for a week. We would give a very small time frame for those confirmations to go out and anybody to dispute. Then that would lead us to about the 24th or 25th of November. Then we have to begin processing all the data and shared staff and the schedules and who teaches virtual and who's the virtual elementary teacher that now has to teach in person, and now who's in person and now has to teach virtual. And then you're moving classes. So then you're breaking up classes. So the amount of time that goes into that, Sandy and Jason lead those efforts on our part and are amazing. They've given themselves to the right now, I think is generous, but around December 7th to get that completed. And then we would then communicate out it to those people. So that would give staff about 10 days to shift or start thinking. And the reason why we could theoretically, if you were looking at things in isolation, do the high school a little bit later because their semester doesn't shift until January 19th. But we have staff that are shared at Steger, Hickson, and high school. So again, you would be getting to a very tight timeline going into break with that shifted semester for it to occur. So we realize that, you know, people have reached out, well, what if things change? And they could, or your feelings could just change. We see that. And that's why we really ask people, if you're in that trepidation, feelings could change, go with that virtual program. And that's what we'll kind of emphasize over and over again. And so we don't really have a lot of space. And my folks are just, I'm trying to respectfully how to say this. We're just burning at every single possible end, just like teachers in classrooms, with everything that we're trying to do. And that task is pretty monstrous. So I would hate to not at least, even though Jason and Sandy are amazing and they give themselves, think they'll get it done about, 10 to 12 days before we depart. I worry about not having that as things come up and they're having to move in other directions. So, but what I've said is that if, again, just like today, my stance is still the same about bringing kids back. But if that changes based on new data, new information, anything, reserve the right to switch that. Kind of the position we have to take, that we've taken, and I feel we have to take. I get where parents are. I understand.
Okay, so all right. So what we'll do now, I think just if board members have other questions they'd like to get addressed, we will find a time to go and do that. We'll just set that aside, literally, just to go and ask those questions. And whilst I don't promise that we're going to ask every question that everybody from teachers, parents, students, other stakeholders might have, if you want to submit questions that for consideration for the board to ask to me, and my email address is available on the school district website, then we will try to get those and try just to address those. I do think it's very important that people feel that their questions have been asked. I do appreciate, Dr. Simpson, everything that you've done in terms of the presentation you've put together, all of the work that your team have done. I've only seen a small portion of all the extra work you've been doing, and I know that it's sort of phenomenal and very, very difficult, and I appreciate it. And as Alex pointed out, what we did at the last meeting, we gave you the go ahead to go and do things as you see fit. And having done that, we need to sort of let you do that. But at the same time, I think it's just important that that we try to address the questions as they exist. So Joe and I will get together with Dr. Simpson. We'll try to find a time when we can have the board meet with as small a portion of Dr. Simpson's team as we can manage, so not to sort of take out of their evenings and whatever. But we'll do that, and we'll try to shoot for that for next week.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
I'm kind of inferring a little bit that the decision at this point is not mine.
No, the decision is yours. We gave you the decision, and there's been no change to that. The decision remains yours. I think that what you view these questions as are things that we would like to know more about, things that we hope will go into your consideration. But ultimately, we've entrusted you to take the decisions that you believe are in the best interests of our staff, of our students, and of the homes into which our students and our staff and our students will return at the end of the day. If anybody else sees that differently, please shout. But but that's certainly the way that I feel. I'm seeing general nodding around. Does that give you better sense, John?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear to what we communicated to families, like should the third.
Your call.
Come back.
Okay. All right. So we will. We're going to have. We will arrange to put together an additional sort of Q&A session sometime next week. We'll notify everybody about that when that's going ahead. Just one other thing that occurs to me. I think that I do think that if, and perhaps it's once the semester is done, I do think that perhaps having a seeing we can get some sort of virtual town hall where the board takes part and where we can interact with the community and where you and members of your team who are available can be part of that. But I think that something where we allow some more interaction once the semester is done would be helpful as well. We can talk about that some more the next time and just see if other board members feel that that is something that's useful. But we won't do that until the semester is done.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay, good. I don't have anything else for this. All right. Thank you very much again. Thanks very much to all of you. Okay. District audit report, and my apologies to the auditors for keeping you waiting for as long as we have, but thank you very much for your patience.
Yes, thank you, David. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. As I mentioned, I do have a presentation.
Can you introduce yourself first, please, just for people who?
I'll give a quick introduction if you want. So we have two. We have two
Pam, why don't you go ahead,
representatives.
please?
Yeah, we have two representatives here from our auditing firm, Clifton Larson Allen. First is Chris Suda, who will be presenting. He's a principal in the public sector group with Clifton Larson Allen. He's been there for 17 years, 25 years in public accounting. Then we also have Andrew Zabel, who's a manager in the public sector group there with Clifton Larson Allen. He's been with them for 3 years, and before that, he was with PricewaterhouseCoopers for 7. So we have a lot of auditing and accounting experience with us this evening. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you. So my name is Chris Suda, as was mentioned, and I am a principal with CLA in our St. Louis office. I am a resident of Kirkwood, so please don't hold that against me. So, thank you for inviting us tonight to present the results of the district's external independent audit. For those who are not familiar with CLA, we are a top 10 public accounting firm. So we do believe we're highly qualified, as we do specialize in audits of state and local governments, including school districts. And I am directly responsible for the district's external independent audit. However, the day-to-day management of it, was done by my manager, Andrew Zabel, who is with us here today. And I'm going to go ahead and move. So hopefully you can see my screen, which I am sharing. So just to mention, CLA was engaged by the Board of Education, and it's our responsibility to, is basically to express an opinion on the district's financial statements as to whether they're materially stated. Our report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance under government auditing standards, and we express an opinion on the report on schedule of transportation disbursements as required by DESE. And we perform an examination of management's assertions that the district complied, with the general requirements of Missouri laws and regulations. It's fair to mention that our audit is performed using a risk-based approach, as would be any public accounting firm. So the amount of time that is spent in each audit area is commensurate, with the level of identified risk. These are some of the significant audit areas for which our audit team spent a considerable amount of time performing procedures. And just to take a quick look at those and move to the next slide. So just to cover the high-level audit results, I do want to mention that CLA's independent audit reports, are signed and were issued today, October 22nd. So whatever was in draft form was final, and that has been moved to sign and released. On page 2 of the audit is our independent auditor's report and our opinion. And this is what we reference as an unmodified opinion. And this is the cleanest opinion that's available under our auditing standards. So this is what the board should expect to see. Any deviation, should raise concern. On page 29 is our report over internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. We do communicate there that we did not identify any material weaknesses. And again, that is what the board should expect. And then on page 33 is our report on schedule of transportation disbursements. We indicate it's fair in all material respects in relation to the statements. And then on page 37 is our report on compliance with state requirements. Basically, this is management's assertions that the district complied with the requirements of the general Missouri laws and regulations. And unlike most years that I've worked with the district, this is the first time that the district's federal expenditures fell below the Office of Management budget single audit requirement of $750,000. So less than $750,000 was expended in federal funds, and basically, that's due to COVID. That was one of the results of COVID. However, we're going to cover in one later slide that we need to monitor this closely because of a lot of the funds that were made available to the district. So I did want to mention really quick, there is a separate letter that's addressed to the Board of Education, which communicates the overall audit results of the audit. If anything had gone wrong with the audit, it'd be communicated in this letter. So, I serve on boards in the St. Louis area, and I always pick this letter up because it clearly and concisely communicates any issues with the audit. However, I am here, tonight to tell you that the audit went very well. The district was very well prepared as they have been in the past, and we encountered no difficulties. So on this next slide, just want to cover some of the really quick high-level impact of the CARES funding on fiscal year 2021. So this is what the district needs to be monitoring. So, as I mentioned, the district's federal expenditures fell below the $750,000 threshold to require a single audit. But however, the district must continue to closely monitor federal expenditures because, like most districts, COVID has had a significant impact. Most considerably, the funding from the CARES Act. The district, has received various CARES awards passing through the state and St. Louis County. And navigating CARES is extremely difficult as there's very little available guidance at the moment. It's basically pending the United States Office of Management Budget's release of a compliance supplement addendum. So again, the district should expect there to be a single audit in fiscal year 21. So that covers my presentation. Thanks again for allowing CLA to present and the opportunity to serve the Board of Education. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions pertaining to the audit, but honestly, like I said, I sit on boards, and this is an extremely clean audit. Joanne and her team and everyone else did a really nice job. I think, from an audit perspective, things went really well. So I doubt that there would be many questions, but I would, entertain any.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, and I will just the board, just so the board knows, auditors did in fact contact me as well as part of this, and we had a conversation about what was going on, what I'd seen from the board's perspective, and that's in keeping with all years. They will always reach out to the board president. So I will throw this open. Does anybody have any questions? I'm not seeing anybody having any. I will also let the board know that Ms. Frazier and presented this to the Finance Advisory Committee earlier this week, and they were all very happy with everything that had come down as well. Every year we hear this, and every year we hear how well the department, the department has done in terms of the CFO's department has done. Pam and Joanne have done in terms of just preparing for the audit, everything being in great shape, and it's always been sort of a matter of of great pride for Webster that we always get clean opinions, and Pam and then Bruce before her and whatever, just things going very well for the district, and so just mention that to the board. If nobody has any other comments, Pam or John, I don't know if you've anything you want to say.
I would just like to thank Joanne as the comptroller and the treasurer for the district. She does an outstanding job. So thank you, Joanne Kite.
Absolutely.
Second that.
Okay. Hang on a second here. Okay. All right. If nobody has any questions, then thank you very much to both of our auditors. Thank you for sitting around for the discussion we had before, and thank you very much for your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 4.03 is the update on construction. I'm not sure, Pam, is this you or is this
Yep.
going to be Rob?
Yep. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Rob Stuber, our district project manager, had a conflict tonight, so he could not be here. He was hoping maybe by the time we got to this that he'd be able to join us, but that has not happened. So you're stuck with me giving this presentation this evening.
He's not
So
moderating a debate or anything, is he?
I don't think so. So we'll start with talking about design package number 2, or safety, security, and accessibility projects. So at Avery, Bristol, and Edgar Road, as you know, those elevator projects are underway. They will improve the accessibility throughout those buildings. The elevator shaft exterior brick veneer is nearing completion at Avery and Bristol. And then Avery and Bristol's ground foyers will be completed over the next few weeks. Edgar Road is a little bit further behind, not behind on schedule, but this was just their timing of their project. Their footings and foundations are complete with load-bearing masonry during the next couple weeks. Then at Walter Ambrose, a lot of changes there, with a lot of them were done before August 30th, before school started. They relocated their existing office space to the front of the building, relocated the existing multipurpose room to the original office space, expanded the reception area, and integrated it into a new secure double door vestibule. Then I just have some pictures I'll share with you, and I have to do a shout out to Kathy Vesperini and Pat Weaver for taking these pictures for me. I do appreciate that. So here is Avery and the view of that elevator, and you can see that brick veneer going up there. The next one is Bristol. So this would be, I guess, the east side of the building facing Gore, and there is that elevator and new windows that have gone in here. Now we're looking at Edgar Road, and as you can see, they don't have that elevator shaft going up yet, but they are on time and on schedule. Walter Ambrose, this picture is of that entryway. They're still waiting. We're not using that entryway at this time. There are some of the hardware for the security on the doors that has not come in yet, and that has been a delay. Due to the pandemic, those items have not come in, so we're still not able to use that entrance. And we'll talk about the Ixon project. So demolition of all the building structures is complete. Placement of the footings and foundations have been completed in all areas. So that would be the new multipurpose room, the 2-story classroom wing, the admin library area, and the cafeteria expansion. The 2-story classroom wing concrete slab is complete. The precast multipurpose room concrete panels have been set in place, and structural steel roof trusses and roof deck are being installed. If you've gone by there, those walls are blue on that multipurpose room, but don't be concerned. It's not going to be blue in Webster Groves. That is just a coating that they put on those precast walls. And then the structural steel installation has begun for the new girls' locker room and hallway and that 2-story classroom wing. The administration library steel package will follow after the multi-purpose room and 2-story classroom wing steel installation. Then the music addition and cafeteria expansion steel will be sequenced based on the progress of the other areas. And then over the next several months, the majority of the structural steel placement will be completed, along with the continuation of the deck floor slab pours. Here's a picture of, this is that library admin area, the concrete slab that's been poured there. Then here is that multi-purpose room. You can see it is blue right now. And then the 2-story classroom wing addition, a lot of steel has been put up there. Here's just another view of that Hickson classroom addition. And then one more view that I believe Pat took this picture from the roof of the existing academic wing. So lots of progress going on at Hickson. It's pretty exciting to see that moving and coming out of the ground now. So be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Although don't make them too hard since Rob's not here this evening.
Does anybody have any questions? Does OSHA know you were taking those pictures?
That's a good question.
No, I mean it's great. Thank you very much for coming back with all of these things. I mean, any areas of concern?
Not right now. Just the little thing is with those not being able to use that entrance at Walter Ambrose. It would be nice if we could be using that entrance right now. But otherwise, we're really, all the projects are pretty much on schedule. One benefit of schools being closed is that we did have the opportunity to move a little bit faster on some of those projects and do things that maybe wouldn't have been able to be done if the students were in the building.
Okay.
David, I have one question.
Please go ahead.
I know that obviously the timing for Hickson is to start next school year there in person. Is the timing the same to be able to begin to use the secure entrances and vestibules at the elementary schools as well as that? Is the schedule beginning next year to do that, or are those going to happen? That transition going to happen sooner?
Yeah, they could happen sooner. Those projects were scheduled to take about 8 months, like the elevator and vestibule projects, so they could start and open up sooner. That could be in the spring.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Pam, I just wanted to say thanks to you and Rob, as well as the building committee. I saw them, I think it was them walking around Avery, and I'm no longer on that committee, but I was a little jealous that day. I saw you with your clipboards, but thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, if there are no more questions, then let us move on to the draft board goals. You're muted, John.
I had $1. I had $1 each time.
Absolutely. I do it most of the time, and then you get muted automatically as well. And that's always a pain. Anyway, carry on.
I shared the draft board goals with you, and there were some that I felt were a little bit clunky. I tried to give a sample of a metric or deliverable, the report for when it would be given. Thanks to Christine for reaching out, kind of questioned 2 of them that I wasn't necessarily crazy about the language myself. One being, and I tried to write the board strategies from the vantage point of the board and your role in a governance role. And so, and I spoke to Sean. One of them was Alex had mentioned the last time, just the step that we made, the progress we made in hiring a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so felt like that should be something that was included. And so I did it, and I included it kind of just for the board to monitor. And I said the support that's provided to Dr. Williamson. And then my metric deliverable was communication from superintendent. And I wasn't feeling great about how that kind of played out myself. But I was also trying to be mindful of, obviously Dr. Williamson is best equipped to talk about the support she's received in the role. But I also kind of felt there was this weird space for her to kind of be in a board goal and how that would look. So I'm just kind of.
So can I stop you for 1 second? And this would be a great opportunity, I think, for you just to introduce Dr. Williamson.
Yes, to everybody, to the public, wanted to introduce Dr.
Sorry to put you on the spot, both on the spot here.
No, it's my pleasure. Dr. Sean Williamson, who started a few weeks ago as our new director, our first director, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And a week after she started was already supporting development of new teachers and teachers and staff in our buildings, and we'll do so a couple weeks from now as well. So it's been a tremendous blessing to have her, and she's extraordinary, and we're all excited. And I'll turn over the floor to you, Dr. Williamson, to share anything that you would like to share.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Simpson. I'm just excited to be here, and everyone has welcomed me with, virtual open arms and shared information. And so just looking forward to meeting all of your expectations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And welcome to the district. And yeah, look forward to getting to know you in person. Look forward to having a chance to interact with all of the board. All right, I'm sorry, John. I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, the only other thing that I wanted to add is that from our conversations in the spring, different conversations at different levels, and our work on the policy, which should come to you pretty soon, the anti-racism, anti-bias policy. One of the things that we talked about was having an annual equity report, whether that's the name or not. And we had spoken recently last week about that would be something that Dr. Williamson would be the point person on, but would be the responsibility of the entire administrative team to be contributing to and share, given that's our responsibility. Equity is all of our responsibility. Was asked about what the contents of that report would be, and I have my own ideas, but we haven't gotten that far, truthfully, but something that reflects both our progress towards creating an equitable school system, as well as the strategies that we're employing to move in that direction is the thought. So, but at this point, we don't have exactly what those contents or those metrics would be.
All right, so. Thank you. So I guess my thought here, two-stage. So firstly, I know Christine had given some comments already. I'd appreciate any comments any board members have based on this. But then what I'd suggest is if you can submit, if you've got any comments afterwards, if you care to submit those to Joe and to me, and we will sort of take them back and we will go and look at these board goals, and perhaps we'll bring those back in so that we can then discuss them as a group with Dr. Simpson. But I'd appreciate if there are any immediate comments that anybody has about both in terms of what is here, and also if there's anything that you feel that is missing. But as I say, if you haven't got it now, please just send me something later, and we'll make sure that it's put up for discussion. Any comments from anybody? Okay, seeing none, in that case, as I say, if you take another look through this, please, if you come back with any thoughts that you have to, I say, if you do that to Joe and me to begin with, and then we'll go and we will discuss this in more detail at an upcoming board meeting. If that works for everybody. Okay. All right. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, I'll approve consent agenda.
Make a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Items 5.01, approval of consent items. 5.02, minutes for the following Board of Education meeting on September 29th.
You don't need to read the various pieces, just 5.02, 5.03 will be fine.
5.03, 5.04, 5.05, and 5.06 to speed things up.
Second.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. I guess just before we adjourn, John, I should actually, before I went and sort of said that's why we were going to handle the board goals. Is that all right with you if we do it like that?
Absolutely.
Good, excellent. Okay, in which case I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Keita. All in favor of adjourning? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions?